Okay, so we talked about automating posts into Webflow, and we're sending them into Webflow as draft posts. And then we have an automation that once a week is going to look for the oldest draft post and set it to publish. So that pushes a post live. We set up our latest post to be published, which goes into the featured section on our template, goes into this area, and every new post that gets published goes into that position. And from there, we want to make an addition to this particular automation. And this is the automation that goes and checks for the oldest draft post and then publishes it. So what we want to do is we want to add something on so that we can send a signal to another automation which pushes a draft email newsletter into ConvertKit, and then we can schedule it to be sent as a broadcast at a specific time. What we'll do is we will borrow our helper that we've been using so effectively, and we will say that when this is in the flow, in the automation, we're going to send this little packet of data that we've been using to trigger webhooks. And this time we're going to trigger the webhook, which is in this new automation, this new make.com scenario. Now, this one looks a little bit overwhelming. One of the reasons that it looks a little bit overwhelming is because it put me through the ringer in setting it up and just dialing in what we have to send into ConvertKit so that the ConvertKit module in make.com doesn't freak out. And we'll walk through each of those steps. But I just wanted to show you that this automation here that you can see, it highlights the fact that we need to have this approach of figuring things out and just being willing to test things and willing to troubleshoot when things come up. And I've done all the troubleshooting on this particular automation, and I'll walk you through it and you'll understand it. But when you're setting up your own automations, as much as we plan, as much as we understand the software and the platform, and we understand the parameters that we're working within, things often come up that we need to figure them out. We need to get past them. And I think this one highlights that. So let's just clean this up so it looks a bit less intimidating, and then we can walk through it. So I can hold down Shift. I can select a bunch of these, and we'll just hit backspace and delete those. We can take away these ones. We're not going to use OpenAI on this one. We're just going to use the existing data that we've stored in Airtable already, and we'll just repurpose that and send it into Kit. Let's hit save and auto align just to bring it all together. And we'll walk through in steps. But basically, what we have is a trigger, which is our webhook. And we're saying immediately as data arrives, then we want to start this workflow. And we are going to receive to this particular webhook. Let's go and have a look at this helper. We've already grabbed the destination URL and we've dropped it into our helper so that when we send a packet of data from the webhook helper, it's going to trigger this automation, which we have labeled at the moment, send email newsletter via kit.com. So let's take this module, hold down Shift, select this module, copy, and then we'll go into our publish draft Webflow post weekly. We'll add a module onto the end. So let's just paste onto the canvas here. And that drops in this make a request module. So let's auto align and save. So send newsletter to Kit. And this is Webflow. We're going to publish an item. We have this addition to our automation now. So what that means is that once a week, our automation will go and check Airtable. It'll look for the oldest Webflow draft post and it'll publish it at Webflow. It will publish it in Webflow. And then after the publishing, we're just going to update our records in Airtable. We're just going to change the stage, publishing stage. over to Webflow published. So that's good. And we've done this already. We've set this up already. And then we want this last step to happen. So we need this URL to be the target URL for this automation. And we would just set it up like this, drop the URL in there. I've been using this already to test this automation, so I know this is the correct destination URL. It's a post method via API, so we're going to send data to this endpoint, and this is the data that we're going to send. We're going to send an Airtable ID. We want to make sure that this particular module takes the Airtable ID from within this automation. So we want to map this to an earlier module. So let's look for that one. We want Airtable number 3 is the module that we want to push. Actually, we could take either of those Airtable modules, but let's go to Airtable 3 and we're just going to put an ID in here. Goes in here and we can click OK and save. And that was good to go. So let's go and mock up. We'll go and mock up our helper, use our helper to push data into our new automation, and then I'll walk through how we've set up that automation. Let's take this one back over here. And in our helper, we are not going to map an ID in there. We just want this particular ID. This is one that I'm aware of, and I just want to use this one for testing, so I can click OK and save. Now this is good to go. And whenever we want to do it, whether this is toggled on green or not, because it's set to on demand, we could run it once anyway. So whenever we need it, we'll send a packet of data over to this automation, and it'll start this one off. So let's get some data in here. If we just say, let's run once, I'll go to my helper, send in the packet of data, and we can watch it go. And it's gone all the way to the end. Each of these modules has run successfully, and we'll zoom into each of them and have a look and just understand what's happening then, okay? So the webhook fires. We take the data from the webhook, which is just an Airtable ID, and we drop that into the Airtable module, and we're going to pull data from Airtable just for that particular ID. And then we go to Webflow, and we're going to use part of the data that's come in from the Airtable record. We're going to send that into Webflow. And that data is the Webflow ID. Let's find out where that is. We have a collection ID. We have an item ID. So this data here is going to be pushed into the Webflow module, which means that we are going to get a Webflow item back. We're going to bring some data back. And all I want to do with that is I just want to be able to access the data that is in Webflow and use the Webflow formatted data and just push it straight into ConvertKit. So this is what comes back from Webflow. So we have plenty of data coming back into Make that we can use to build our email newsletter. And then we need to begin to stage our data. Let me show you what the email newsletter will look like in here. If I refresh this page, because we've sent one in already. So this is scheduled to go in a few hours. If I click on this, we'll go through and see how it's made up. So we're sending in the title of the broadcast. We're sending in a linked image. And then we have the title, a headline of the email, and then we've got some body copy. So from this one here, Masters 3 Cool Drum Fills with CJ, all the way down to the bottom of the body copy here. We'll call that a second block of data. And then this last one here is we have a text link as well, so that we can link out to our post on Webflow. So there's 3 different parts that I want to draw our attention to then. Part of the reason that we need to stage our data is that we need to clean the data. And so we're sending packets of data in what's known as JSON. So it's just a file type. And if we go to our helper, we'll see we've been using this packet of data. So JSON is identifiable with the square brackets and then the curly brackets, and then our data nested inside of it. And I'll show you the newsletter side. We're going to a ConvertKit endpoint, and we are going to use part of the URL, so just the pathway. And the pathway that we're going to send to is, if you look underneath this input, it says api.convertkit.com, and then we are adding on the path of v3/broadcasts. And I'll show you that in the API documentation as well. If you search for the documentation for ConvertKit's API, you're likely to see version 4.0 at the top of the listings. Just click on that. You can't actually use version 4.0. It's in closed beta at the moment. This particular account that I'm using to record does not have access to version 4, but to version 3. And when you sign up for the API, then you'll have access to version 3 just now as well. And I don't think it'll be too long before version 4 is released and the beta ends. But we want to make sure that we are looking at the correct documentation for now, and then you can go back and change it. And it says this here, just at the top, API v3 is no longer in active development, but we still need to use it in the meantime. So if we scroll down, we want to find broadcasts. This is just where we find this data so that you can reference what we're actually doing just now. So developers.kit.com/v3 and then #broadcasts. And we want to create a broadcast. This is what we're working with. So you can see here the endpoint is v3/broadcasts. I could copy this here and go back into Make, and this is what we're working with. So that's where we've taken it from. And we can just take a lead from the documentation then. It says we need to send a post request to v3 broadcasts, and we've set the method as post. When we opened this particular module, it was already set to do content type application JSON. This body section at the bottom is where we need to map our data into. And so if you go to the documentation, we can take the example response, we can copy this and go back into Make. I'll paste this in here so we can have a look at it. And so we've taken from the documentation the literal example that they're giving to us, and then we can go back and map our own data on top of it. So I just want you to be clear on, when you're not following a video lesson how to do this, then this is how simple it seems. Tricky working with APIs and looking through documentation, but it's important that we get comfortable with the documentation so that we can troubleshoot anything that comes up. And Make won't be the answer to everything. Zapier won't be the answer to everything. We need to be able to come in here, be comfortable with the terms that we find in the documentation and working within the parameters that are laid out here. And so we've taken this example, we've pasted it into the body, and then we can start to map in our data. I'll take away this example that we've got just now, and we will use our own example. So we are going to send content, and we're going to send a description, which is actually just an internal description for our kit.com account. For each broadcast, we are going to send in a subject. We have a template, and we can update the template, and we will set it to public false and send at this timestamp. First of all, let's look at this. We've got content, we've got linked image, body content, and call to action. So 3 different parts. And as I was troubleshooting why the automation was not working, this end module here, ConvertKit, was saying the JSON was invalid. So I was trying to send data that was invalid into ConvertKit. And it took a bit of changing things around and scratching my head and just sending smaller and smaller amounts of data and taking out everything that was mapped and just using text just to keep sending little packets of data to see if the API would be happy with that. And once I started to find out what was going wrong with the data that I was sending, then I could start to remap data in there and start to build it out again. And then we're left with this body content that we see here just now. So first of all, the content is a linked image, body content, and a call to action. And then in our kit account, we have linked image, body content, call to action. So linked image, body content from around here, and our call to action, which is really just our text link. So let's look to see what we've done with the data to put it into a format that allows us to push it into ConvertKit then. So the first module that we have is a module that allows us to set a variable. And a variable just is a place that we're going to store some information only for the lifetime of this one run through the automation. And after we've run through the automation once, then that variable is cleared. So we're storing data just for a little while. It's like having it in one hand, and we're going to pass it into the other hand and use it, and then it's done. If I wanted to put in a new module for a set variable, I can just add a module. I'll click on it, and then I'll search for variable. And we get the make.com tools module that's got various aspects to it, but set variable is one, and then set multiple variables is also a useful one as well. And so we'll walk through this just now, but this could be a more efficient automation. And when I provide you with blueprints, I will provide you with a more efficient automation. So for example, we don't have to set a variable here, set another variable here, and another variable here. We could do all three in one module, and that saves operations, and that would just be cheaper longer term. The more efficient we are in our approach to our automations, then the cheaper it is to run our account long term. So I will give you a more efficient automation than we're looking at right now. So this first variable, we're wrapping it in paragraph HTML, and it just consists of an href image link, and we're going to pass it in text form. We're going to give make.com the first part of our URL, and we just get that from the website. So we're taking it from, if we go to the blog post itself, we're going to take this first part of the URL and we'll give that in text form, and then we'll map on the path because we have the path available to us. So if I click here, we can see that we've got the second part of the URL. Let's find that. So this blog post link, we've stored that in here. And so when you add on what we've given in text form plus the path, that equals the entire URL for the post, which takes us to here in full. So that's the first part. And then the image source is still in testing mode. So we want to map this in. So let's go and get the image. Let's find out where this goes to. .png. So image source. So let's map this in. We'll go to blog post featured image. We're going to open it up to drop it down because I want to see what the URL is. I click on URL, and so that gives us the field data blog post featured image photo URL. So if I clicked on this top part, that's not good for us. If I click on the file ID, it's not good for us. We want the actual URL, and we want to pass the URL. And we can add in an image description. We'll just say learning drums. We could map that in dynamically. We'll just leave it as text form just now. We actually have the headline for the email coming from this first variable as well. So we click OK, and that's good to go. And then we can click save. This last one is blocking us from, we can save
So
it.
let's go on to this next piece of data that we want to prepare before pulling it into our ConvertKit module at the end. So I'm going to click on string, remove line breaks, and then we'll go to remove quotes. And then we'll go to the variable, the body content. So we're going to take some content, we're going to prepare it twice, and then create a variable in 3 parts. So string, remove line breaks. The reason that we need to do this is because if I leave the line breaks that form part of the HTML and Markdown coding, then it's causing the ConvertKit module at the end to freak out. And so we want to send a clean data in through our JSON packet of data. It needs to be clean and it needs to be acceptable to the API. And so we need to clean twice. The first thing we're going to do is remove new line breaks. And the second thing we'll do is to deal with the quotes. We won't clear them, but we'll deal with them. So the first thing then, let's go and send some data in through here. Let's ask for it first. So we'll run this once. We'll run again. So now this is our module and it's run through and it's happy. And I just want to show you what data is coming in here. If we look here at the string remove line breaks, I'm clicking on the magnifying glass and then we can have a look to see the data. So this first part, it looks clean there and it looks clean on the output as well. But if we look at the actual data here, the input bundle, we come along here, it's actually happy just now. Okay, that's fine. And then the output bundle is going to be clear as well. We just don't want to leave it to chance. We just want to be able to say there are no new line breaks. There are no \n or /n character combinations in here. And so we're just cleaning the text. And I'll show you how we've done it anyway. So I'll make a new one down the bottom here. So this input, it wants to take some data in that we're going to map in. So we know how to do that. We can take any of these data points, any of these variables, and we can paste them in here. But what we can also do is we can manipulate the text. And so instead of using this data that's available here under the star, we're going to go across to the A. And so these are our text and binary functions. So I want to be able to manipulate the text that we are working with. I want to pass in the text and I want to strip out some characters and then move on. The first thing I can do is I can click on replace. It's one of the functions in here. And this is what we get. And it's very helpful in the sense that if I move the cursor along, that we get these little prompts about what Make is looking for. So we start with this first one. It says replace, and then it gives us a clue. It says replaces the search string with the new string. So if we see our example above, we're saying field data, blog post, rich text. So let's recreate that. We go back to the star and we say field data, it's in number 8. So we look to number 8 module, which is Webflow, and it's color coded. And field data, blog post, maybe you've seen it already here, blog post rich text. So I click on that and it's mapped it in because the cursor was there. The cursor was in the correct place and I've mapped in the data and it's gone right in where the cursor was. So you go to the next part and we say the search string first and then the text first and then the search string. So this is the search string. And what we're looking for is a line break. That's the reason that we're setting up this tool module. So we go back to our text and binary functions, and we go down to the bottom, we've got keywords here, and we can add in new line. So if we look on the right-hand side here, this will likely catch you out, as it just did for me. When I clicked away from the options here, so I had the cursor in the right place, and then I clicked here to go to text and binary functions, and I clicked new line, and it's actually fine now. So just pay attention. Whenever you change over here, sometimes it changes where the cursor goes as well. So we're saying, first of all, pull in the rich text data, then look for new lines or line breaks, and then replace it with this character. And we just want to say, we don't want to leave it empty. We don't want to put a space in quotes. We just want to use our keywords down here, and we'll just add in empty string. We just don't want anything there. So we're looking for new line characters and we're replacing it with an empty string. And at that point, I could click OK and save. Now we've doubled up here, so I don't want it to happen twice. I just wanted you to see how to build that out. So I've deleted the extra one, hit OK, and then I can save. That's the first thing. We've removed the line break. Let's go along to the next one. And the next one deals with this character, the quote character, 66 or 99. And so we want to, not to remove it, but if we leave it in, then it will cause a problem. Let me show you where it would cause a problem. If we go inside of our final ConvertKit module here, you can see that the JSON data has these quote marks. So we were wrapping actual data and making reference to the makeup of our packet of JSON. If we include quotes within these quotes, then that will cause a problem. And so we get around that by adding in a single quote, an apostrophe I would know it as, rather than double quotes, 66 or 99. So for example, in here, in the variable link to image, we can see we've got a text link here. And when this data is brought into the JSON data in the ConvertKit module before we send it over to ConvertKit, then it will be wrapped within the structure of our JSON, which includes quote marks. And so rather than using regular quote marks in here, as we may normally do, we're just going to use an apostrophe, a single quote mark instead. And that's how we get around it. But we can't just ignore that in text that's being pulled in, text that's generated by AI, manipulated, and then eventually brought in. We're not necessarily reviewing our text looking for quotes. So we have to do it programmatically, and we want to search for them and deal with them. Now, one thing you could do, we could take the text that we're bringing in first of all. Within our replace function, we could look for the quote marks, and then we could just do this. We could use our empty string. And what that would do is it would look through the text. If it finds quote marks, it would just remove them. Now that's fine as far as dealing with JSON is concerned. It's not great for the user because we're removing part of the foundation of the English language, and we don't want to do that. So this is how we get around it. We don't use an empty string. We use a / character with the quote. And this is known as escaping the character. And it looks right now a little bit weird, but it won't show up when the text and the content goes all the way through to our newsletter. So we need these two modules in place so that we don't have to be hoping that those characters are not there. We want to set up a flow or a system that looks for these and takes them out and does it programmatically. Okay, there. And then we've dealt with the line breaks. We're not necessarily removing quotes. So we're actually escaping quotes. And then we create the variable for the body content. Okay. So now we have a LinkedIn variable or body content variable. And we go to our last one, which is the call to action. Let's save. Call to action. So we've named it CTA, and we're just pulling in this data. I'll show you why in a second. We're just going to use these like building blocks and stack them one after the other. So we have a text link. You could go to Perplexity, you could search Google, do anything that you need to do. And if I'm honest, I'll just go to Perplexity and say, I need a text link. I'll get that from Perplexity, copy, paste, and then change out what I need. And so we've mapped in some data again, and just pay attention here. We're not using quotes because that would cause a problem. So we've got our single quotes. We're using text string for the bulk of the domain, and then we're adding on the data that we can map, which is the path at the end, using the blog post link data here. And then our text, click here to watch the video lesson. Click OK and save. And then how we construct this, we've already looked at where this came from. We can borrow the example data from the documentation, and then we just strip out what we don't think we need and then map in our data. And these variables, you can see them at the top here. We have the linked image, we have the body content, and then the CTA. And we've literally just put the cursor where we want it to be. We've gone to linked image, body content, and CTA. And it's still wrapped inside of our double quotes. So I'll delete those examples. Let's just look at this send at time as well. If we go to our date and time data in here, we could say this thing needs to send at a specific time. And we could say on this day, on this date, at this time, it must go then. But that doesn't serve us well when we're automating. So we need to take in a timestamp, and we want to say, there's various ways that we could do it, but we want to say now and then add on some time. And if you cast your mind back to how we are scheduling this at the moment, we're using this automation flow here that on a specific time, 8 a.m. on Saturdays at the moment, this flow will run every Saturday, 8 a.m. It will go for the oldest draft post in Webflow, and it will publish. And then at the very end, we're going to send a webhook to this URL. We're going to send in mapped data from this first module, and that triggers this automation that we're looking at. And so we know exactly when that automation is going to run. And then what we can say is, after that post is published, we could say now plus any number of hours. Or you could say at the same time that runs and that post is published, then send the email newsletter. So at the moment, this one is mapped to go 3 hours after the automation runs. So I know it's Saturday, 8 a.m. I can go to date and time, and I could say add seconds or add minutes or add hours. So I'm going to use the add hours one. And the cursor's at the end. And so I want to just go back in and say add hours. Going to say, when does it start? Now is the timestamp plus how many hours. And we might say 8 hours or 5 hours, however many we like. I will just type in the number 3. So that timestamp at the bottom is the given time when this particular module runs plus 3 hours. We hit OK and save. So if I go to kit.com, I can see that we have no queued broadcasts, nothing ready to go. Let's go and send some data in from our helper, run this automation, use the helper to send in data to trigger it. And if we go back and refresh, we've got this broadcast is set up. And it's scheduled to go Eastern time. I'm not on Eastern time, but it's scheduled to go in 3 hours time. So we have the title, a linked image that if I click on this, it will go out to the correct post, title, got our body content, and then we've got a text link at the bottom. That's how we send an automated broadcast email through kit.com.